They're out there somewhere. The big fish. Peering into the calm surface water, you might not see them in our midst. Though deep down, swimming and lurking, they wear the face of a common vertebrate, blending easily into the shoal like a bloodthirsty speck of sand in an ignorant bag of flour. As I dragged my dinghy along the white sand toward the edge of the water in the searching, low-hanging sun, it was easy to believe I was in a fever dream. The swallowing, gurgling water that ebbed and flowed at my feet, the welcoming blue void that curved away at the horizon, fishing was like reminiscing with an old friend. It was like a warm kiss on a Sunday afternoon. A greeting beckoned me from somewhere down the beach, a voice that yelled with a slurred mouthful of rotten seaweed. That, or the voice was cracking under smoking 2 packs a day of vocal fry. The man came jogging up to me, which left great boot prints upon wet sand in his wake. As we shook hands, his flesh was slippery and feverish, like brushing the belly of a seeping roadkill. Name's Trevor, finest fisherman along the southeastern coast, if you don't mind myself saying so. His eyes were tight lines under his sage bucket hat. Conqueror of the Floridian Basin's furthest surf cast out here. I flicked him the nervous, tightly pulled line for a smile, the same smile I would have given a hooded passerby. Hi there, I resisted wiping away the gooey slop from his hand out of politeness. Georgia. The falling sun painted the man's face a blotchy, tanned pink. He had a glint in his wrinkled eyes as he said, "Look over there, chap." I followed his finger to the distant skyline over the cliffs. Graphite clouds were beginning to roll in over the horizon like an avalanche of wet boulders. "Say, I knew someone like you, Georgia." He cleared his thick throat. "Name of Rod, real city boy. The last day I done saw him was a day like any other. We were meant to launch off the ramp together, but see, I was a little late, and so the guy gets restless. He goes out on his own to catch a few." I watched Trevor for a while as his eyes became fixed on the crashing peach waves, watching things that were never there. "The storm came and took him from me, Georgia. Mother Sea dragged him down by his limbs, bubbled his lungs, until his lips drew blue." "He drowned?" The man shimmied his bucket hat to the brow with 2 hands. "You bet. And that's my vow after that day, I suppose. If I ever caught a city kid fishing, heading into rough waters, I'd snatch him." He flicked a thumb over to the metal boat that was floating in the water 100 paces away. "Oh, no, I'm quite okay," I said. "Oh, come now, humor a weathered old man. You can darn bet I'll teach you some things. My boat is a sure thing sturdier than a dinghy." His lonely old eyes yanked me by the wrist all the way across the beach to his rustic metal vessel that floated on the shallow water. When we boarded, I was immediately greeted by blunt groans and bubbles beneath us I wasn't accustomed to. Before long, we were motoring toward the great red lamp in the sky with nothing but a whisper spoken, all thanks to the boat which whirred and splashed beneath us as we thumped along into the blue nothingness. I was grateful for the quiet, but as I caught the man's face, it was clear he had a growing restlessness I lacked. A yearning for derailing chatter that only came from a finely aged loneliness. When he stopped the boat and dropped the anchor, I knew I was right when he immediately started. "You ever seen a big fish, Georgia?" I gave him an awkward nod. "A few, yeah. Never caught one, though. My brother pulled up a sturgeon." Trevor was shaking his head as he untangled his line from his rod. "No, I'm talking about the big fish. The ones that don't have no name." His hands were passionate and animated as he spoke. He swiftly snapped up a crackling smile before I could laugh. "They're smarter than us, you know, the ones down below." Oh, so it's even worse. I thought, he's crazy. I should have never got on this boat. "Take these," he muttered, hurried as he reached into his jacket's many pouches. He slipped a few gelatinous cubes the size of a die into my palm. Most were the color of red-splashed peaches, though some were a deep purple gray, blocky grapes from an ashen willow. "You probably won't believe me yet, Georgia, but you will soon enough." He cleared his throat. The jelly was sweating in my hand, but perhaps it was my nerves. I was breathing quickly. Something about the guy simply made my skin crawl. "What are these?" I asked him. He slid one of my hooks through a cube. "Bait for the big uns." Now give her a cast. I let my line sparkle and soar through the pumpkin-tinged sky before it reached the water with a distant plunk. We sat there for a while, entranced by the sea, but the old man never threw out his line. He was coaching me. At least I should have hoped. A bite might be coming soon, kid. He nodded toward the ocean. Keep a firm grip on it. I wiped a layer of sweat from my forehead. From my periphery, I saw him extend one wrinkled palm, holding some bait. Try one. Tastes like sweet heaven. What? Still clutching my fishing rod, I turned my neck to give him a raised eyebrow and a shake of the head. What are they made from? It's candy, Georgia. The big fish love the stuff, Trevor said before throwing a few into his mouth. Melts like butter. He ushered me to try the bait, so I reluctantly did. The pieces hit my tongue and slid down my tract. Malderance is to spit in the face of the deranged, and so I chewed them, slowly, bits of revolting snails that rolled down my throat in lumps, almost coming up as chunks. It was disgusting. It stung with the stench of decay. At first it tasted like chicken, as everything does, sorta. But after swallowing it, might as well have become a moldy creme brulee the way it settled. Bliss, right, kid? He said after I was done chewing. 2 thumbs up. I was lucky to find peace for a while after that. Just watch the sea and breathe, Georgia. Watch the sea and breathe. Shame Rod ain't here to see this city kid eat these here jellies. What a way to go, struck by lightning no less. The champion you were, Rodney. Zeus! He screamed. Without warning, I was running into a jog across the boat following my line. Something was hooked. Something big. Hey, fish on, kid, Trevor called. Reeling and pulling and reeling and pulling, I threw my spine forward and then backward. Before long, the fish and I were in rhythm, tugging in waves, pulling and leaning in harmonious turns. Trevor, I huffed. Pull, release. Pull, release. I thought you told me that Ron drowned. Whoa, she's a big one, kid. Keep reeling. He boomed, his head hanging overboard. You see, if you want to catch the big fish, Georgia, he said in my face, then stabbing one lesson-giving finger at me as he spoke each word in short breaths. You gotta have the special bait. And that, kid, you do. The low sun on the horizon felt warm against my skin, but I couldn't calm my heart, which felt like it was going to pop. Trevor, you told me that Rod drowned. Keep reeling, Georgia. My yell cut the sound of the ripples in the water like a hot knife. Trevor? There was a silence for a while. Words from me were quiet, unwilling. All that could be heard on the settling boat was my reel spinning and my catch surfacing the water. I hadn't seen what I had fished up. I was too busy staring at Trevor. What's so special, my voice faintly trickled from my mouth, about the bait? He held up a handful of the peach cubes and began talking through rubbery, fishy lips. Oh, these fine cuts? His pocket knife sparkled in the hot sun as he absent-mindedly twirled it, his face occupied by old memories. Take a look. He nodded his head at me to peer at the water. I slowly strode towards the wall of the boat. When touching the edges, I was reluctant to peer over, as if he had asked me to touch a hot stove. My face turned cold as I looked into the blue abyss below. Dozens of pale rocks floated in the deep azure sea, which stretched as far as my eye could see. But as I stared longer, if I squinted enough, I could no longer convince myself that they were stones. They were pale, bloated corpses. Hold. So many cubed holes scattered into their bellies, thousands, all etched into their flesh. Seems you caught the big fish, kiddo. The voice tickling my neck was rasp, a tongue never made for speech. By the time I turned around, its flesh began to bloom iridescent scales. What remained of Trevor's curly gray hair shed away snowflake clumps of hairy scalp. Clothes that no longer fit around his neck slid easily from his wet mucus-dipped gills. I wanted to scream. In fact, I might have. No dollary dues could buy me this bait from nobody. For them to hand these over. His bulbous orange eyes met mine before his mouth contorted into a whole wide, toothless grin. "I gotta take 'em out fishin'." And so, I am but a warning for future fishermen, for they might not be as lucky as I to dive and swim to shore. They're out there somewhere, the ones you might not see in our midst. The big fish.